They tell me a Texican named Robert Irvin Howard started it. I disagree. I think an Achaean named Homer did. Howard, nearly 2,800 years later, reduced it, raised it, brought it into the 20th century, and created a new subgenre of fantasy. Some of us call it heroic fantasy, some call it epic fantasy, although the two aren't always synonymous. Some call it sword and sorcery, a phrase invented by a practitioner named Fritz Lieber. There is usually a fantasy element, and there is usually a hero, bearing in mind that hero isn't a sexist word, only heroine is. So, heroic fantasy, HF. It can be said to appeal to all ages, although though thousands and thousands of people above age 20 are closet fans of HF. Either you're crazy about it, can't resist it, or think it's nonsense, or pretend to. It hardly ever gets good reviews because high adventure fiction in which the mood is not existential futurism and the good guy usually prevails without federal aid isn't literature. You know, literature like Homer or The Three Musketeers, which has outlived all the parasites who, as critics, sneered at the novel and its creator, Dumas. That is a little introduction, kind of with an axe to grind, written by Andrew J. Offutt in the anthology series, the first volume of Swords Against Darkness, which contains a whole bunch of great fiction from people like Paul Anderson, mainly Wade Wellman, Ramsey Campbell, and Robert E. Howard. I read this as an introduction to my review of Dungeon Quest. And I'm reviewing the original Games Workshop version, or the Games Workshop version. The original was actually, I think, a Swedish game, but this is the Games Workshop version. I have nothing against the Fantasy Flight version, and I will probably review that at some time because I think it deserves to stand on its own right as a good game. But I realized that I had not made proper reviews for all of the games in my top 10 dungeon crawl list or my top 10 adventure game list. So I'm going to remedy that mistake and get to it. And I've decided to do Dungeon Quest as the first. So Dungeon Quest is in my top 10. It is one of my favorite games. It is one of the most purely fun dungeon crawls out there. It is almost a party game, I would say, because of how fast it can be, how fun it is. Games of Dungeon Quest almost always result in stand-up die rolls or cheers or jeers. People get faux angry. The game is a riot, and that is why it is so much fun. So we're just going to kind of go through the game, look at its components, talk a little bit about them, and then move into the expansion. So this is my third copy of Dragon Quest that I've owned over the years. My first one got lost in a move. My second one I sold when I was getting rid of a bunch of board games around 2009, 2010, and then I had rebought this one. And this one hasn't been played all that often, but what I always like to do is I like to keep a tally on the inside of the box of who wins, when we remember to keep the tally. But my old copy had a large sheet in there, and it's kind of like you can kind of create a history of the game and create your death tally and all of that kind of stuff. So that's really fun. It's a fun way to kind of memorialize the death of your heroes and the triumph of your heroes throughout the course of you owning the game. Now, unfortunately, I have never actually owned a copy of Dungeon Quest with the original minis. Every copy I've owned, I've gotten without the minis because it's always like so much cheaper to get it without the minis. And the minis aren't that great, and I already have hundreds of minis to use. So when I'm playing, I will usually just substitute one of the Warhammer Quest minis. I'll use the elf there for the archer, or I'll use the barbarian. I will usually use this guy and the noble, but yeah, you can substitute anything you want. It would be nice to have the original minis. It does add quite a bit of resale value to your game, but it is absolutely not necessary. So the original game comes with 4 heroes, and they're all pretty basic. You've got Volric the Brave, Sir Rohan the Knight, Ulf Grimhand the Barbarian, and Alderon Sureshot the Ranger. It's a good thing he became a ranger with that last name. Most of these, so you have strength, agility, armor, and luck, which are stats that can be checked and tested during the game. You have a certain amount of life points, and they range from 15, 17, 16, with the elf having the fewest of 11, but the elf gets to shoot some arrows and help himself in combat. Combat is the main area where I think this game has some trouble, and it's not very interesting, and I always use kind of a shortcut. But the main goal of this game is you pick a hero, and let's say we're going to pick the Barbarian here. We'll just kind of set up for a solo game. And then you pick one of the 4 towers to start in. So you are trying to get into this castle, get into the middle chamber, which is the Dragon's Den, and get as much treasure as you can and get out. And you have 26 turns to do that. As the sun rises and sets, if anybody is left in the castle when nightfall sets, they are dead. And so the winner of the game is the person to escape with the most treasure. And as the rule book says, you have about a 15% chance of doing that successfully. Even in daylight, the dungeons are dangerous with dead ends, monsters, traps, and last but certainly not least, the dragon which guards the treasure. After long experience and extensive play testing, we know that your character has about a 15% chance of survival. So this is a very dangerous game. It is also highly luck-based. This is a pressure, luck, and a race game at its core, wrapped around a dungeon diving theme. And I've said this before, but there just aren't enough dungeon dive games that utilize the pressure luck element. And it's really bizarre to me because a hero pressing his or her luck is such an important part of sword and sorcery fiction. So I'm always surprised that that element rarely makes its way into the games that represent, our favorite genre. But yeah, this is a game all about getting into the castle, exploring the castle, working your way through trap and monster-infested rooms, searching for secret doors, and just trying to find a safe route to the treasure and then escaping with your life. And I have seen games end on the first turn. I have seen games where the winner of the game had 0 gold. He was just the person who happened to escape. I have seen games where the hero has thousands of dollars worth of treasure. So what you're going to do is you're going to pick a character. Like I said, you're going to pick a starting area. You're going to take one of these little tokens that Games Workshop was fond of from the era. You're going to place that on your life so you can keep track of how many life points you have left. And then you're going to start exploring. And the game does not come with the Crown Royal bag, but it is an unwritten rule that all games of Dungeon Quest must be played with a Crown Royal bag. And in this Crown Royal bag, you're going to have a number of room cards. And these represent all of the different rooms and corridors and different areas you are going to be exploring inside this castle dungeon here. And there are quite a few of them. Some of them are empty, some of them are normal rooms and corridors. Some of them have special rules that you have to read on a little cheat sheet. But the game is really simple, and that's its greatest strength. It is a perfect marriage of simplicity and speed and fun. And those three things combined together are really what make this game such a triumph, because it really does capture the sense of danger, of getting in and out, of having this really dangerous dungeon diving adventure. Far better than a lot of games that have a ton of rules and take, hours and hours and hours to go through. So what you're going to do is basically you're going to, at the beginning of your turn, you're going to first, you're going to move the sun up one space, or on the first turn, put the sun marker on the first space. That is very important, and it created one of our first kind of like inside jokes. We would always roll, whoever the first player was, before they even moved, we would all yell like, update the sun tracker or something like that, because I don't think I've ever once played a game of Dungeon Quest that lasted exactly the number of rounds that the game was supposed to last. There was always some time where you forget to update it. Did you update it? I don't know. Did you update it the last one? I don't know. Let's add 2 to it. Let's add 3. Let's add 1. So always try to remember, if you're the first player, to update your sun tracker to keep the game honest. But then you're going to pick one of your exits from where you are to move into to try to get to the chamber. And you're going to draw a card here, a dungeon room. And that is a black arrow. So the black arrow, these are from the expansion, the Catacombs. We will take a look at that in a bit. All right, so you have to pass over the white arrow entering the room. So you put that down there, move your hero onto that space, and that is an empty room. From the room, if you enter an empty room, you are going to draw a card from the room deck. And the room deck has all manner of things waiting for you. Sometimes you will find crypts. If you discover a crypt, of course, you will draw a card from the crypt deck. And the crypt deck has all kinds of things waiting for you to discover, like potions, gold, empty. You can find a trap waiting for you. You can find amulets, which are from an expansion. We'll go over those in a bit. More potions. You can find more treasure. Shuffle the deck. More traps, more amulets. Skeleton, which you will check the reference sheet. So lots of cool things to find in crypts. You might enter a room and maybe your torch goes out, which is the worst, because then you have to sit there turn after turn, rolling a d6, trying to get your torch back lit. And if it doesn't, then you miss a turn. This game has a lot of missing turns, but the turns are so quick that I don't think it's a problem like it is in some other games. Some rooms you discover will be empty with different graphics. A vampire might attack you. That is from the Catacombs expansion. You can find a trap door, which is not good. You can get a troll can have a sneak attack on you. You can discover a death warrior. Oh, God, I love the death warrior art. That is so cool. My favorite monster in the game. Curse of the Wizard. So I'm really glad that this card came up as an example, because this was our favorite like inside joke. So when this guy comes up, you actually look in the reference sheet. So the reference sheet contains all of the rules for the different cards and stuff. They didn't try to, I like this. These are mini cards, but they didn't try to cram in all of the rules on the card. They just left it open for the art and a title. And then you would check the reference sheet to find out the details. Compared to when like Fantasy Flight, when they use the mini cards, the art is super tiny and they try to write in tiny little text on the card what it does. I don't mind using a reference sheet. I know it's kind of old school, but I like that. But you go to the reference sheet and you find your Curse of the Wizard, and then you would read that. As soon as you draw this title, all the corridor tiles in the dungeon will rotate. So if there were any corridors, you would roll and then you would rotate them by that. And we just always thought it was so hilarious that this powerful wizard would be like standing in the middle of the dungeon or on some tower, and he would be like, rotate! And then that was his like one power, was to rotate corridors in the dungeon. Love it. But yeah, so as you can see, there's a lot of things. If you can find a dead adventurer. In that case, you would go to your corpse deck here, and then you could find nothing. You could find a rope that could help you escape from certain traps. You could find treasure. You can find a scorpion that would attack you. More potions, more ropes. So yep, lots of fun things there. And then as you are exploring, it is super possible to find yourself in a dead end. So I'm just going to pull out some random tiles here. Like let's say we found this as a dead end there, and we went there and something happened to where this room was blocked off or something, let's say. So we found ourselves in a dead end. Well, then you would have to search, and you would take the search deck and you would search hoping to find a secret door which would allow you to escape. You could also find amulets. Sometimes you could find this wizard's amulet, which is a 2-part card that you have to combine with another part, which is somewhere in here. But then that will give you a special power. But the main thing you want to be searching for usually are secret doors, because you want to be able to escape. There's the other part of the wizard's amulet. That is from the Catacombs expansion. The Catacombs expansion is really good. The catacombs itself aren't all that interesting, but it adds a lot to the various decks. And then sometimes you might find traps, in which case you will draw a card from the trap deck, of which there are quite a few. The cave-in is a super deadly trap. It could be an instant death. And then sometimes you will come across doors, and the doors you will have to see if they are open. If they are closed, jammed shut, in which case you think you have to do like a strength check or something. And sometimes you will also find trapped doors. I believe, is there any trap doors? Maybe not. Yep, there's a trap. So lots of exploration, lots of moving through the dungeon. So we're just going to pretend like we have made a safe route here. Let's say, I know these don't actually line up, but we're just going to pretend that we have this safe route here. And we've made our way into the dragon's den, and now we're looking for the ultimate treasure. And when you come into this, you're going to draw 2 treasure tokens, and those will tell you your points basically, and how close you are to winning the game. And so like if you drew these 2, you would say, oh, okay, I have enough gold, I'm going to try to get out. But every time you are in the center room and you draw treasure, you have to draw one of these dragon head cards. And there are, I think there's one that has the flame on here. And if you get caught with that, there's a really good chance that you're going to die. And so again, this is like a pressure luck, where as you are drawing treasure, you're going to draw one of these, and okay, I'm safe. Now I can stay in that room on my next turn. I could draw 2 more treasures. If I'm feeling greedy, if I need to get more money to win, oh, that's a good one, 700. But then you have to draw another dragon card. Okay, the dragon is still sleeping, good. And so on. Eventually, you know, you're going to get down to where you only have a few cards left, and one of them is the dragon's breath. Which one? Oh my gosh. Okay, so like if this was it, you would have a 50-50 chance to get blasted with dragon breath. And then after you get your treasure, you have to get out. And sometimes the way out, your way out, is blocked, so you might have to explore to get out. Just all kinds of awesome adventures are at hand in Dragon Quest, and it is always, always fun. I've never had a game of this be boring. And I don't really enjoy playing this game solo. I do. I mean, it can be fun because it's so simple, and it can be just really light entertainment. But I like Escape the Dark Castle. I think this game excels as a almost party game, because it's always fun to like shit talk with your friends and egg them on, and you know, egg them on, encourage them to keep going. You know, don't be a wuss, keep getting treasure. You know, and laughing at them when they fall in pits and all that kind of stuff. So now there are some tiles that have different color arrows, like an orange arrow or a blue arrow, and those are special tiles, and those all have their special rules here. There are bottomless pits, there are cave-ins, there are chambers of darkness which cause you to get lost. There are rotating rooms, there's a portcullis, corridors that you just have to like keep going through, and all kinds of different traps, chasms, and yeah, it's a pretty fun game. When you find well, it's not just a pretty fun game. This game is awesome. What am I talking about? When you find a potion, there is a random potion chart that you have to roll a d12 on to see what happens. A 1, the potion of healing. Okay, but you can also get an instant death potion. Now, normally combat is used using these cards, and it's kind of a rock, paper, scissors thing where the one player as the hero picks what he's going to do, the other player as a monster picks what they're going to do, and then you compare the results and you find out how much damage is done either to the hero or the monster or both. And I just find that it's really unappealing. It always just usually comes down to you're just picking one at random, and if one person is picking one at random, it really does no good to develop a kind of strategy for the other player, so it ends up taking too long. So I always use, whenever I'm playing, even solo or with other people, I use the solo rules for combat, which are included here, which you just roll a d12 and it's just random when you lose, when the monster loses, or when you both lose. It's just a much simpler system, and because this game thrives on its simplicity, it is a better system. One cool thing though is when you do encounter a monster, one of the other players will draw a card, and then you can pick if you're going to attack, wait and see, or escape. And then they reference what kind of monster you're facing, and then certain things happen. So I do like that system. That's really cool. So one of the expansions here is the Catacombs Expansion, which does add tiles to, or does add cards to almost all the decks. It adds more magic rings for you to choose. When you're choosing your hero, you also choose a magic ring, which is like a one-time bonus that you can use once per game, and then it is lost. Pretty powerful. It adds these amulets, which the amulets you can't really use in a single player game because each amulet has a different thing that triggers it. So you pick an amulet at random, the player next to you reads what it is, and then they have to keep track of when you trigger the amulet's power, and they can be good or bad. But the main thing that the Catacombs expansion adds are these catacomb cards, and you will find certain tiles that lead down into the catacombs. This is a yo dog, I heard you like dungeons situation, where even the dungeons have dungeons. And you're going to move into the catacombs, and as you move into the catacombs, you're no longer moving on this board. You are moving kind of in an abstract way through the catacombs, looking for treasure. That would be a very fortunate catacombs thing there, the catacombs draw. And you can encounter rats or trolls, you can encounter empty rooms, and really you're trying to find treasure down in the catacombs. And then eventually you want to avoid the cave troll, definitely, but you want to try to find an exit. And then once you find your exit, you take all of your catacomb cards, you total up how long you've been in the catacombs, and then you roll on this chart here, and that kind of tells you where you come back out onto the main map. So it can be fun, but it can also be a little bit uneventful. Most of the times when you go down into the catacombs, it's not as fun as it should be. But all of the other stuff that the Catacombs expansion adds is fantastic. And then we also have the Heroes of Dungeon Quest, which adds in a bunch more heroes. It adds 4 heroes that are just duplicates with different names of the original heroes. And then it adds in 8 new heroes. These 2 are a pair. And then you've got this kind of like chaos sorcerer. He's really fun because he comes with a deck of spells that he can use. So I like him a lot. And then you get a warrior of chaos, dwarf, an adventuress, one of the only women. This was during Games Workshop when they weren't including a lot of female characters in their games, so it's nice to see this has 2. a gladiator, a thief, and a ninja, like from Talisman. That's cool. But I think that the special characters, they all kind of come with these additional rules, and in my opinion, it adds a little bit too much to the game. When a game is this simple, even adding a couple rules adds a lot of wrinkles to the game, and I think it kind of takes away from the main thing that makes this game so much fun, and that is its simplicity and speed. And so if you were playing with somebody who had never played and they wanted to play the ninja, you would have to explain additional ninja rules or different thief rules or adventurous rules or elf rules. So it can be fun, but it's kind of like a more advanced version of Dungeon Quest, and I'm not sure that Dungeon Quest needs an advanced version. One other thing that the Catacombs does add, I forgot to mention, is some snotling tokens. So sometimes you can fight these snotlings, and it's really cool. It's super thematic the way that this does this, because like, you have to roll a certain amount of dice at the beginning, and that tells you how many snotlings you are fighting, and then you just have to keep like attacking them with a d10, and you subtract the number, and if there's any left, then you get the new total. And if there's any left, they do damage to you. So it's kind of like this horde of snotlings is coming down the hallway at you, and you keep hacking at them, and it's fun. It's super thematic. You can totally imagine the hero just hacking away snotlings with limbs and guts flying everywhere all over the halls. But yeah, that is my review for Dungeon Quest, one of the games in my top 10. A fantastic game, really, really fun with a lot of neat stuff, tons of different cards and good art and good theme, but most of all, just a great fun game that really does capture the experience I would imagine that a hero going into a super dangerous dungeon would feel, and does so better than games that are a lot more complicated. And its greatest strength is its simplicity and its quickness. So all right guys, well, I hope you enjoyed that review, and we will talk to you later. Bye bye.